So Bethesda did a deep dive into Starfield in the Starfield Direct right after the Xbox showcase, and I felt so overwhelmed by the amounts of information that I was given that I decided to rewatch it and take some notes on things that I really did like from the showcase. And this whole thing lasted over 40 minutes, so in the interest of keeping this video short, I've picked out 5 things that I'm going to talk about throughout this video. I mean, whether you love or hate Bethesda, this game, you have to admit, is going to be a massive game. It's going to be an enormous amount of content in this game. There are a lot of people who don't believe so or straight up just hate Bethesda and believe that it's going to be an empty and buggy mess. And they might be right in regards to bugs, but to say that this game is just No Man's Sky from Bethesda, or whatever the idiots are calling it, is being very dishonest. This game is so much more than just being a No Man's Sky. It's a combination of a lot of different elements. While I was watching this entire direct, I did feel a little bit of No Man's Sky, but I also felt Skyrim, I felt Fallout, I felt Rage 2, I even felt Mass Effect. There's honestly a lot going on with this game, and I want to talk about it for a bit, but before we get started, if you happen to like this video, you want to see more from me, please hit that subscribe button, leave me a thumbs up, and leave your thoughts on the video down below. Or if you want me to talk about a specific game, let me know as well. I love talking about video games. So as I said earlier, I rewatched the whole Starfield Direct and I took some notes, and I found 5 things that I really did like about the game. And the first thing is, your character doesn't talk. Now, for a Bethesda game, that might be common sense, that might be normal, but in Fallout 4, they didn't do that, and that scared the crap out of me. I thought it was one of the biggest mistakes they ever made. And maybe I was the only one worried about it, but I thought Fallout 4 was going to be the new template for dialogue options in Bethesda games, and that was not good. It was horrible. They completely threw away skill checks and just said, hey, you can either ask a question, say no, say yes, or say yes like an asshole. And I'm just really glad that Bethesda, decided to bring this back, because I think it's the better dialogue option. You have more to say, and based on your skill set, I mean, anything can happen, honestly. And speaking of skills, the next thing I want to talk about is the skill tree in this game. Starfield combines Skyrim's level up tree and Fallout special system. Obviously, you'll level up by killing enemies, which gets you a skill point like in Fallout 4. However, you can then rank up those skills by performing tasks or challenges related to that skill, like in Skyrim. There are going to be 5 different skill trees, each with 4 levels to rank up. The 5 trees are physical for your character's physical abilities, social for interacting with companions, NPCs, and even creatures, combat for all things related to killing, science for crafting and maybe even cooking. I'm mostly just guessing on the last one. They didn't really even talk about the science tree. And tech is the last one, for things involving robotics and other gadgets. Honestly, this is easier to manage than previous games. In Skyrim, the progression was very tedious and hyper-focused on what you did. In Fallout games, progression wasn't really that focused, but it feels like the special system could have been a lot better. The combination of the two is pretty interesting in this game, and I wonder how far we can really take this if we can max the whole thing out. The next thing that got me excited was they were talking about background and traits and how they actually matter. When you create your character's background and traits will now impact how NPCs interact with your character. This allows players like me to roleplay with their characters on a level not often seen in RPGs. As shown during the showcase, picking a Beast Hunter background might get you involved in a side quest or something, and the Chef background has some interesting dialogues tied to it as well.
From chef to dusty. The crew still has a betting pool about which restaurant critic you must have crossed to wind up here.
Then there are traits that affect how NPCs act around your character. This dickhead is back. In video games, when they give you the option to have traits, I like to call these your character's personality, and they will also affect how your character operates in the world. I know one of the traits I'll be picking up is the introvert trait when I start playing. This really goes along with them saying throughout the direct that you can play this game however you want to play. That was honestly another issue I had with Fallout 4, was that there was no background to it. If you picked the male character, you were just an ex-military guy, and if you picked the female character, you were just the wife of the ex-military husband, which, it sucked. So I'm really happy that Starfield is making background and traits really matter when it comes to your character's narrative. The next thing I want to talk about is combat, which has gotten a drastic update compared to previous Bethesda games. The first thing I noticed was how smooth it looked. Compared to Fallout 4, the differences are night and day. The gunplay has been improved tremendously. It kind of reminds me of Rage 2. It just looks quicker, it looks more impactful, and there's so many things you can do while you're fighting enemies. This is all cool, but knowing me, I'm probably going to be using stealth to get through most of the game, honestly. Now, the only thing I'm curious about is when you're out with your companions, will there be any kind of tag team moves or anything like that? That would be pretty cool. Now, the last thing I want to talk about was how fun the ship customization looks. I'm a big fan of having multiple things for multiple tasks, and in Starfield, you can have multiple ships that you can modify to suit whatever you're doing. You'll start off with the ship called the Frontier, but as the game progresses, you can obtain more ships and customize them in a way that suits you. I mean, you can customize everything. Just look at this shot of the Frontier. You can change every single piece of the ship. I mean, they showed off some really cool and really crazy designs during the Direct. And you know, when they first gave us a look at the gameplay last year and showed off the ship customization, I was making jokes. I wanted to create Mass Effect's Normandy or the Tempest ships. But looking at this now and how much you can change, I mean, shoot, the joke might become a reality. Now, during the Direct, they didn't really cover this at all. They briefly mentioned it, but there's a battle cruiser that you can dock with in the game. And I wonder if, as a player, we'll be able to own our own battle cruisers. You know, a place for us to store and view our ships. That's one of my favorite things about No Man's Sky, is that when you create your base, you can create different landing ports where you can store your ships, or if you have your freighter, you can go on your freighter and look at all the ships that you own. So I hope there's something like that in this game as well. But those are 5 things that I'm really excited for after watching the Starfield Direct. Honestly, everything about the showcase made me excited for the game. And of course, they said during the show that, you know, there are still many things that they didn't talk about. So who knows how deep this game is going to get. But what are some of the big things about Starfield that made you excited for the game? There was a lot that I wish I could spend more time talking about, like the different factions, wildlife on different planets, base customization, and they even have the Force in this game. Seriously, Starfield is going to be a fantastic game, and I can't wait to get my hands on it.